Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first of our sessions going through Of Mice and Men. It would be great if I started at the actual title screen, wouldn't it? So today I'm going to be going through a little bit of the introduction to the work. I've decided to do this as a video so you guys can access it in your own time and go through it at a time when you are a little bit freer. Or if you need to pause it and then come back to it, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to be talking through the first chapter of Mice and Men today. There's 6 in total. And I'm going to give you a little bit of contextual information, and then I'm going to ask you to do a couple of short tasks, all right, just to make sure that you're following the work and that you understand what's going on, etc., etc. Okay? So we are looking at the novel Of Mice and Men by Steinbeck. That is a copy of the first edition. Okay, so that's what the original title looked like, and we can see these two guys here sort of walking down this long country road, which is quite a significant image. Historically, this was written in the 1930s, and in the 1930s, something called the Wall Street crash happened. Now, Wall Street, as you know, is a financial hub in America. It's where a lot of sort of capitalist activities happen, and they make a lot of money there. Now, when the stock market crashed, it meant that a lot of businesses and a lot of people lost their jobs, and as a result became incredibly impoverished. This period, along with terrible weather, meant that a lot of the crops failed as well. And it's considered, so it happened at the end of 29, and it's considered one of the worst economic collapses in the history of the modern world. We remember as well in about 2008, we had a financial collapse as well across the world. And that, for many years, had a great impact on many countries around the world as well. So it was like a more localized and a very extreme version of that. This was started a period called the Great Depression. It spread from the United States to the rest of the world, lasting from 29 until the early 40s. With banks failing, businesses closing, more than 15 million Americans, which was 1/4 of the workforce at the time, became unemployed. That is huge. Depression also led to a drop in market price of farm crops, which meant that farmers were forced to produce more goods in order to earn the same amount of money. So everyone had it very, very hard. The worst for the farmers was the terrible weather that they had. They had a series of droughts that ruined crops, dried up the soil. They were driven off the farms because of lack of money. A lot of farms were repossessed by banks because a lot of businesses and a lot of farmers had to borrow money from the banks to get set up. Droughts mainly affected Midwest, Oklahoma and Arkansas. It became known as the Dust Bowl. There we've got an old picture of a stone there. And where did people go? Well, a lot of people headed west to California. California has a hotter climate. You can grow crops there that are more suitable to that sort of hotter weather. And people felt that there were lots of opportunities to go there. So loads of people headed west looking for work. A lot of poor people. And of course, with any mass immigration, you get people that are resentful. There were people in towns, with sort of pitchforks and rifles saying, there's no jobs here, move on, go to the next place. So a lot of these desperate people that were traveling, hundreds of miles to try and get to safety and employment were actually turned away. A lot of people end up in sort of unofficial camps as well, where there was disease and crime and things. It was really, really terrible. The setting for our particular novel, short novel, is Soledad, and Soledad means isolation or loneliness in Spanish. And obviously that's symbolic, isn't it? Symbolic of the condition of the emotional condition and the social condition at the time as well. Many people were isolated in society. Just a quick timeline there. So we have the financial crash at the end of 29. In 31, 2 years later, factories started closing, banks start closing, farms start collapsing as a result. Roosevelt came in 33. created the New Deal, which offered financial support for unemployment. But you're talking 5 years after people really started to struggle. And then Of Mice and Men is published just a year after that. So Of Mice and Men really is reacting to the poverty and the suffering of people in society at that time. John Steinbeck was born in 1982 in Salinas, California, which is much of the setting for Of Mice and Men. And as a teenager, he used to work on a lot of the farms. So you'll see that the way it's written, the way people speak and stuff like that, it's very authentic. And the way it's written is authentic to how people would have spoken. So if you're struggling, just put kind of like an American twang on the text, and it'll probably be a little bit easier to read. There's also an excellent film version as well, which is very, very close to the book. It's not exactly the same, but it's pretty darn close. And that's also really helpful for understanding it. We'll watch that. The title is from a poem called To a Mouse by Robert Burns, who was a Scottish poem. He's originally a farming boy, and he wrote the poem To a Mouse when he realised so many were killed in their homes when the farmers were harvesting their wheat. And what it is, if we just look at this quote here, the best laid schemes of mice and men gang aff aglai and leave us naught but grief and pain for promised joy. All right. And what it means there is essentially that you can make the best plans, you can do everything right, but some unknown force can affect your life, and there's nothing you can do to prepare for it. So we're probably expecting plans to start going well and then end up badly, all right? So it's the best laid schemes of mice and men, all right? And so that's why the novel is called Of Mice and Men. So let's have a look at the setting then. So there's the setting of California, Southern California. It looks very beautiful there. But as we can see, that's what it should look like now. Rich, big fields and, mountains and with forests in and fields and very green and verdant. And here we've got the Dust Bowl, how it was then. All right, so imagine trying to grow stuff in this environment. Very, very difficult with the droughts that they had. Salinas here is in California, kind of in the middle actually. And that's where the setting of the novel is. Look at how he describes nature. There's a path through the willows and among the sycamores, a path beaten hard by boys coming down from the ranches to swim in the deep pool, and beaten hard by tramps who come wearily down from the highway in the evening to jungle up near water. And then from the direction of the state highway came the sound of footsteps on crisp sycamore leaves. The rabbits hurried noiselessly for cover. A stilted heron laboured up in the air and pounded down river. For a moment the place was lifeless, and then two men emerged from the path and came into the opening by the green pool. You'll often see Steinbeck include some really beautiful description of natural environments. He had a great love and affinity for the natural world. He was also really interested in marine biology, and he knew California really, really well because he used to work and travel and live around there as a young man. So all of these things contribute to his writing. Now, one of the things that we see is that a lot of these beautiful depictions of nature are often ruined by the intrusion of man and violence of man. And we've got a little bit, just early on in the novel, we've got a little bit of foreshadowing that actually, mankind is a great cause of suffering in the world. And nature has its rhythms and its patterns and its cycles, but mankind kind of tramps over everything and ruins everything and brings with it destruction and dismay. So what I'd like you to do for the first task is I'd like you to read obviously the introduction, which is the first chapter, and it's only about 18 pages, so it's not much. And then what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to read the descriptions of George and Lenny. Now on the next slide, I've got a very, very simple diagram here, and you can cut and paste this into your notes, all right? And what I want you to do is just give me some descriptions of each character using the text as evidence. So anything that describes their physical appearance, anything you can infer about their intelligence, their behavior, their mood, their personality, how they speak, who's in charge, etc. Pop that in. So I want your inferences, but I also want some quotations as well. Make that as detailed as possible. These are our two main characters. They're not going to be the characters that we actually write about for our coursework, but as the main characters, we are going to be following those two. And therefore, it's very, very important that we do understand them and how they're characterized. So that's the first task I'd like you to do. Okay, he's just making very detailed notes on each of the characters. That's George, he's the little guy there, and Lenny is the big guy. All right, so it's easy to tell them apart. George and Lenny are often described in opposites. So think about the ways in which they're described as opposite. Obviously, you should cover that with your notes here. But they also have an interdependence, okay? They have a symbiotic relationship. So in the same way that the coral and the clownfish, or the bee and the pollen, or this bird and the crocodile, they have mutual benefits from being together. So for the example of the crocodile doesn't eat the bird because the bird cleans its teeth and keeps its mouth healthy and fresh. And the bird gets a free meal out of it, but also cleans his teeth. All right, so it's beneficial for the bird, it's beneficial for the crocodile. So there's an alligator. I think it's an alligator. They're both benefiting from their relationship. All right, and it's the same for George and Lenny. They both get something out of being together. One of the key themes about the novel, which we need to know about, is this idea of the American dream. You probably heard people talk about that before. So the American dream is the idea that you can pursue your dreams and happiness and achieve it in America. That you can do anything you want if you just work hard. And if that working hard will lead you to achieve your dream. The idea that you shouldn't give up on yourself or give up on your dream, that nothing is impossible. These are really core ideas. You can see this on like reality TV programs where, you get some kid who goes on and say, it's my dream to be a singer, they're terrible and you have to kind of let them down gently. But this idea that, no, if I work hard enough, I can do anything, I can achieve anything. I think in Britain, we're probably a little bit more cynical. But that's why we see a lot of optimism in America and American cultural products is because of this idea that you can achieve anything if you work hard enough. And that's part of this concept of the American dream. Even if you start with nothing, if you work hard, you can achieve anything you want if you put your mind to it. So Lenny said softly, we could live off the fat of the land. All right. So we have to sort of switch our understanding of language here. We could live off of the fat of the land. All right. It doesn't make much sense. But if you read it, how Lenny would say it, we could leave off the fat of the land, right? And then we know, okay, that's what it really means. And sure, said George, we belong there. There would be no more running around the country. No, sir. We'd have our own place where we belong and not sleep in no bunkhouse. So that's their dream, is to have their own place, all right? And it's described in quite a bit of detail. They often have this conversation about their sort of dream little farmstead and how they would live there and how nice it would be to have this little place and not have to move around all the time looking for work and living off next to nothing. They could be self-sufficient. Now, what you need to do is you need to think about, what does that dream actually mean for them? It's not just about having a nice little house. It's what it affords them. What does it give them that would make them happy? What they don't have now. Crooks, character said, I've seen hundreds of men come by the road and on the ranches. Every damn one of them's got a little piece of land in his head. So obviously they're thinking about, what they, having their own place, having their own little farm, and never a goddamn one of them ever gets it. So what do you think is the attitude here towards the American dream? All right. It seems like it's unrealistic. For hundreds of years, the USA has been associated with the promise of a new life and a better life. Early settlers went to escape religious persecution. Others went in search of land and independence. Until the 18th century, land was virtually the only way to gain wealth and power. America gained the reputation as a country where anyone, no matter what their background, could succeed, as there was no rigid class systems, unlike the United Kingdom, for example. Only hard work and talent were needed for success. This idea still pervades American culture and social consciousness in the 21st century as the land of opportunity. So I'm sure you can think of your own examples from TV series or films where people are, going to America to try and make it, all right, to try and live their dreams. We've got a couple of quotations here as well. I'd like you to quickly analyze, all right. Itinerant just means that they move around. They don't have stable jobs in one place. They have to move from ranch to ranch, from farm to farm, trying to pick up work to survive. So guys like us that work on ranches are the loneliest guys in the world. They've got no family, they don't belong no place. They come to a ranch and work up a stake, that means save some money. And then they go into town and blow their stake, and the first thing you know, they're pounding the tail on some other ranch. They ain't got nothing to look ahead to. So how is the cyclical nature of the ranch hand's life portrayed through language? And what does this tell us about their loneliness in their lives? Second quote here shows a difference. This is with George and Lenny. With us, it ain't like that. We got a future. We got somebody to talk to that gives a damn about us. We don't have to sit in no bar room blowing in our jack just because we got no place else to go. If them other guys gets in jail, they can rot for all nobody cares a damn, but not us. So we know that their dream is to own a farm, but is it more than that? And it is, all right? What are they actually trying to achieve apart from just the physical ownership of a farm? So read the section again and just make sure you're really clear about what their dream is. And then I want you to answer the question specifically, why do you think they want this place so badly? What will it give them that they don't have already? Finally, guys, I want you to find 5 quotations for me from chapter 1. Find one quotation that describes the beautiful California countryside. So that might be from the beginning of the section. I want you to find 2 quotations that accurately depict the hard life that George and Lenny lead. So what's hard about their lives. One quotation which addresses the theme of loneliness and isolation, and then one quotation which addresses the theme of dreams. All right. So we've got some key quotes here to get us to put into our notes. Okay. You're going to submit your work from this lesson, and I'll be going through it and checking it, and then we'll move on to chapter 2 next time. All right. Thank you very much. And remember, any questions or concerns, drop me an email at any time. Thank you very much.